Hi, I'm Marty Schupak. Welcome to Schupak Sports. This is baseball, softball, practice module number 10. If you've been following us, we're up to number 10. In this particular video, we're going to go over running an efficient batting practice, which I've touched on before. I'm doing a little bit of a deeper dive. Keep in mind, if you follow this technique, you can increase the amount of swings by your team anywhere from 10 to 40%. I'll say it again. You could increase the amount of swings by anywhere from 10 to 40%. And if you like what you see, I urge you, if you want to make it better, by all means, adjust it and make it better to fit your team and your league. Now, I coached for 30 years. I live 27 miles north of New York City. I used to commute from the city back home, and I would run practices at our local field, usually anywhere from kids 8 to 12-year-olds. I spent a lot of time in T-ball. I also spent time coaching above 13-year-olds in the school system. All right. I made a ton of mistakes. Every year I reevaluate myself, try to make myself a better coach. So let's get right into it. Make sure, if you like what you see, please subscribe to Schupak Sports. And if you look on the channel, you'll see we're going to have over 10,000 drills coming up. So please subscribe, and I think you'll like it. All right. First thing I do when talking about batting practice, when the kids arrive, and I've said this before, I give them each a number. First one to arrive is number one, second one, number two, and so on and so forth. I'm going to keep this assuming that you're going to have about 12 players on the team. Whoever arrives first and is number one, at the end of practice, or when we have batting practice, they're going to bat first. Number two will bat second, and so on and so forth. This is a great technique to get kids to arrive at practice early. You'll see that a lot of times these kids on your team, once you establish it, they'll have their parents rearrange their schedule around your baseball or softball team. Whereas before that, it was reversed, and they would just have their own schedule and then squeeze in practice. Your kids will monitor their own parents to get them to practice on time, because they want to bat first, second, third, fourth, whatever, in batting practice. First thing I do, and keep in mind, as I said, we are 27 miles north of New York City. Fields are at a premium. All right. It's very difficult to get a field. That shouldn't stop you from practicing a regular practice or a regular batting practice. I've had some of my best practices in the parking lot. There's no excuse not to practice as long as the weather is okay. You could take any corner of a parking lot and put a good parking lot practice. You have to adjust the drills. You have to adjust the batting practice, how you're going to do it. You're not going to use hard balls on a concrete surface. The first thing I do is, and I'll try to hold this, I use 5-gallon buckets. I put one behind the pitcher's mound and one a few feet behind second base. Okay. The reason I do this, when the players hit the ball, the fielders field it, but I don't have them throw it to first base. I like to have them, and I teach them to throw it to the closest bucket on 1 or 2 bounces. I maintain that when you are doing batting practice, that's what you want to focus on. You don't want to focus on fielding practice or base running. There's no such thing in my batting practice, run the last one out. I save that. I'm big on base running, but I don't include that in my batting practice. Just so you see, if you could see this picture, I have the bucket over there by the back of the pitcher's mound, And the second bucket over there behind second base, I think this is looking at it probably from right around between home and first base. All right, so that's a shot really of what I do with the buckets. If you think the 5-gallon buckets are going to be cumbersome and you want to use regular buckets, if you're concerned, again, safety is our biggest concern. You don't want your players to get hurt, then just reduce it to the regular buckets. All right, here's another picture of what I'm doing. You see the bucket. This is looking out past the outfield. Again, this is right past second base on the outfield grass. So you have two buckets, one behind the pitcher's mound, one on the outfield grass. How I set it up, just so you know, these modules, I try to keep them under 24 minutes. This might be a little shorter. Stick around because I'm going to, at the end, I'm going to have a bonus. I'm going to have 3 hitting drills, 2 for young kids and 1 for older kids. That'll make your team better hitters. I guarantee it. I've used it. Keep in mind, I'm numbering the kids 1 to 12. Now, this is what I do. And also, any extra money you have, and I'm not a big proponent of spending your own money on your team. Their registration should cover it, but I use it on extra balls, okay? I buy anywhere from 2 to 4 extra dozen balls a season. And that's not to say that I'm not frugal with my baseballs. After every practice, I comb the field and I always come back with more baseballs than what I arrived in. So take care of them, but buy extra baseballs, all right? Also, what you want to do is you want to get an L screen, all right? The reason being is you want to protect yourself. I coached up until my late 50s, and a lot of us lifers that coach baseball or softball or any sport, we get into a little bit of denial where we don't think we've aged or we could do everything we've done as a coach when we coached at 28 years old. And that's not the case. Safety is my main concern for the players and also for the coaches. And I'll tell you a sad story. Back in 2007, there was a coach in the minor leagues, Mike Coolbaugh. He was coaching the first base coaching box for the Colorado Rockies. And unfortunately, he got hit in the head with a line drive and he ended up passing away. It was a horrible situation. And since that incident, minor league base coaches, I believe, are required to wear helmets. And after that incident, I started wearing a helmet at third base. That's where I like to coach. All right, this is what I do. Now, this, you have to pay very close attention. I number the players 1 to 12. The first 4 players, as soon as we start, this is the setup. Number 1 will go and he'll bat first. Okay, number 2 is on deck in the dugout. Very, very important. Number 2 is in the dugout. He is ready to hit. He has his batting gloves on. He has his bat out of the bat bag. He's all ready to go. The number 3, he's hitting off the tee with a assistant coach. And the number 4, he's doing the toss drill on the other side against the fence. Now, you have to get your league's policy about hitting the fence. I use soft covered balls and like a pickleball or wiffle ball. As far as the toss drill, and I've showed this before, I use what I invented a rag ball. This is an old one. What it is I roll up a rag and I roll around 1 and 2 inch masking tape and I toss it up and the players will hit it against the fence or against the wall. The reason I do this is I want to eliminate chasing all over the place for the pickleballs, all right? These balls will stay fairly close to where you're tossing it from. So let me go over this again. All right. number one is going to be at bat. Number two is in the dugout, ready to hit. When you start the batting practice, number two is the only player that's not going to do the preliminary drills, the toss drill or hitting off the tee. He's the only one that loses out. If you want, you could give him an extra swing because he's not doing the practice drills. My goal here, and once this guy's done number one, number two goes in, one runs out into the field, and number five comes in. My goal has always been to have my team get 1,000 more swings, each player, than any other team or as a team. And I'm not just saying any swings, I'm saying quality swings too. All right. I'm a big proponent of hitting off the tee, and I'm a big proponent of the toss drill. And utilize your assistant coaches. So the other thing is this too. And now let me just show you the final setup. As you see, I have 4 outfielders here. If you want to use let's say number 12, you could have him help out the coach with the toss or the hitting off the tee. Again, there are no base runners. And what you want to do is you want to keep track of the numbers. You're pitching on the pitching mound. I go to the base of the mound. Rule of thumb, if you have an L screen, you could go to the base of the mound. If you don't have an L screen, stay on top of the mound on the rubber. Your safety is important also. And what I do is, and I learned to do this, I'll pitch. When I'm pitching, I'll keep like 2 or 3 baseballs in my glove. All right. I get into a regular pattern and I throw the ball. I take the other one out of my glove and then I'll turn around. And what I usually do is behind me. Now they make all these net buckets that are standing up. You can put your baseballs there. If you're like me and you don't want to spend the money, what I do is I take 2 5-gallon buckets. I put them back to back. I put the first one down with the whole face of the ground, the second one up, and I put the baseballs in there just so you don't have to bend down that much. It's a lot quicker. Remember, you want to be efficient. Every second you save, you're giving more repetitions to your players batting. All right. Again, you have the very important, which I didn't even go over. I'm a big proponent of bunting. I set up 2 cones on the third base side where a bunt should go. The first 2 pitches, I have the players bunt. If it goes through the cones, for everyone that goes through the cone, they get an extra swing. It's amazing. You start doing this, you'll see players will want to come after practice and work on their bunting. And what you're doing, though, is after the player bats, you're rotating. As a coach pitching, you have to hesitate, number one, between pitches, and number two, when you're rotating, you got to make sure the players are set in the field and the next player is set to go to his position. So after 1 goes, 5 will come in, 3 will go to the dugout. He's ready to hit. Again, if the on-deck hitter isn't ready to hit, you skip him. I tell my team that. I've done it. They have to be ready to hit. No such thing as, okay, number 3, you're in. Oh, I got to get my bat out of the bat bag. You got to be ready to hit. That's the whole key. When you're pitching, and you'll notice over a period of time, when the players hit the ball, you'll know from the sound of it when you could pitch the next one. Now, very important, when the players catch the ball, you instruct them to throw it to the buckets on 1 or 2 bounces. All right, so the balls are in the vicinity of the buckets. When you run out of baseballs pitching, you say, okay, everyone help with the baseballs. A very important thing to do is make sure you tell them no playing basketball. Kids, especially young kids, will have a tendency to pick up the balls instead of just dropping them in the bucket. They'll start shooting baskets. And one way to overcome this is, let's say every 3 or 4 times you have batting practice, you have a special few minutes where you say, okay, we're going to play basketball. Let's see if we can throw it in the buckets, and you have the whole team do it. But generally, no basketball. You have to drop it in the bucket. There's a lot of movement when you're doing this batting practice. Players are running in and out. Okay, balls are flying all over the place. But what you're doing, though, really is because you're focusing just on hitting, the players are always looking at the batter. They're not throwing it to a different base. All right. I have found that doing this technique, I get a lot more repetitions than if I do the regular, throw 5 pitches, run the base, net last one out. But besides that, the fact that you're doing a drill here and a drill here, you're keeping players active rather than just have them stand around. And because you're efficient as far as keeping baseballs in your glove, you have a bucket of baseballs, you have the L screen, you could pitch a lot more pitches. The fact, if you have the L screen and you're going to the base of the mound, you're going to be throwing more strikes. All right. So that's it. If you can improve it, by all means, do so. And I promise you that I would show a couple of different hitting drills, some basic. Let me go over. Let's stick to 2 drills. And I am a big proponent of ending practice on a high note if you could. A lot of times I'll do home run derby. I'll use second base as home plate for 10-year-olds. I'll put a drop down base there for 11-year-olds. And right near the pitcher's mound, there'll be another one for 12-year-olds. I created a game, though. I brought in the old tennis racket, and I created a game of tennis racket home run derby, and I'll pitch them from the outfield tennis balls. Kids love this. It's stimulating. It gets them psyched up. There's a lot of cheering. At first, they'll swing the tennis racket like it's a baseball bat, but then they'll catch on. They'll realize they could swing it with one hand, but so what? They're doing an activity. The last activity I want to do is the continuation drill. And when I started a few years ago, you hear coaches, they'll yell to players with 2 strikes, just make contact or, choke up in the bat. I put in a drill where I will start pitching. I set it up like batting practice, and the player has only one chance to hit the ball. He's got to hit it on the ground fair. It cannot be caught on a fly. It cannot be hit foul. And you can't swing and miss. And if he's hitting the ball on the ground, making contact, he could stay up for, I use the number 5 pitches. It's a great technique to get players to focus on making contact and just hitting ground balls. So if the first player's up, I throw and he swings and misses, he goes out in the field and I call up a next number. Next player's up, he goes up, he swings a ground ball hit. Even if the guy catches the ball, he stays up. A ground ball stays up. Fly ball to the outfield. If it drops, he stays up. Fly ball to the outfield. If it's caught, next player goes. In games, when the players had 2 strikes, I would yell out continuation drill. They would automatically cut down on their swing the bat, and hit ground balls, and a lot of times it extended their at-bats. This drill works. It's conditioning. It's not going to work if you do it just once. If you do it a few times and then start telling them from the third base coaching box, do the continuation drill. It works. You'll see. It'll extend their at-bats. I promise you that. So that's it. Please subscribe. Oh, as far as products, everything I told you about the batting practice is in this book, Baseball Coaching, a guide for the youth coach and parent. Check it out on Amazon. You could go to your library, ask them to get it. If you don't have the money to pay for it, don't pay for anything if you don't have the money. The next item is a book and a video. 44 baseball mistakes and corrections. They're good for softball too. I noticed over the years, players were just making the same mistakes over and over again. I sat down in the course of a season, started writing down the same mistakes that come up over and over again. And I put it in the book and how to correct them. I'll give you an idea. Some basic: using gloves that are too big. Always catch with two hands. You don't have to always catch with two hands. Not practicing interference, not practicing obstruction. These are things that we know about, but why not practice it? Second baseman not backing up. Rundowns, having too many throws. When you have a player in a rundown, the best number of throws is 0. The second best is 1 throw. I don't go to the theory that running back to the base, you want to grab an out. If you have a player in a rundown, it's actually a gift from the baseball gods to get an out. You have to practice it. Teach your players. Get the base runner in what I call a sprint mode. I urge you, all you coaches, if you're serious about baseball or softball, 44 baseball mistakes and corrections. We're going to wrap it up. Please subscribe. Tell your league. Please share this. I want to keep the same format, and I will be back again for Marty, Schupak, and Schupak Sports. Until next time, I'll meet you at third base.